Hello YouTube, this is Hunter Surge, here with another Elestrals Firestorm deck profile. I actually recorded this right after the other two deck profiles that went up this week, so like, this is back to back to back. But today we're going to be talking about another one of the starter decks, archetypes. Today we're going to be talking about Hermes. Hermes is very interesting because like you cannot build Hermes normal. You just can't do it. It costs too much. You need very specific deck building to like even try to make Hermes work. One of the big standouts to me in the Hermes card pool has always been Dracodoodle, and there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with Dracodoodle. So today we're going to be taking a look at a Dracodoodle deck I've been cooking up, trying to make up for the weaknesses I noticed early in testing. And this build has felt pretty decent in testing. I think it's the closest I've personally gotten to a Hermes deck that like feels good and doesn't feel like I'm spending 5 billion spares to do what other players are going to be able to do for 2 or 3. So yeah, let's. Oh, right. Can't forget it. I gotta do it in the intro this time. I have an official affiliate link code. If you're buying anything from the shop Elestrals store, I would really appreciate if you use that link. It is down in the description. With that said, let us get into the deck profile. Alright, so here is the deck. So, let's go over the basics of what we were trying to achieve here. So, the center of the deck is Dracodoodle, Champion of Hermes. This is a 6/2, 2-wind Elestral. That when a Cockadoodle is sent to your underworld, you can special cast this Dracodoodle from your underworld with 2 wins. You may only play 1 Dracodoodle this way each turn. There's a second effect that it gets +2 attack for each suppressed card on the field. That's obviously pretty relevant into Like Void, because it means if your opponent has a Like Void board, has 2 Werepups out, oh, the Dracodoodle is now 10 attack and can beat over the Like Void instead of having to crash into it. Pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. What this effectively does is once you set up this Dracodoodle, all your Cockadoodles are Hydrakes, and better in several ways than Hydrake. So way number 1 is they don't lose to suppression and they don't lose to removal. If it gets Cryoblasted, if it gets Gorgon's Gazed, it's still going to convert into the Dracodoodle, which is really, really good. The other way is that it doesn't care how they end up in the underworld is the thing. So you can discard the Cockadoodle, you can dump it with Hermes, you can pay the spirit off the Cockadoodle for like a rune, have the Cockadoodle die to under enchantment, and that will still trigger the Dracodoodle. So you may notice there's some interesting cards in here. We'll get into it. So, first off, we have our 6 copies of Cockadoodle, Original Cockadoodle, and Champion of Hermes Cockadoodle. We just want as many of these as we can, and these still have like 4 attack, so they have pretty decent stat lines. Original Cockadoodle is a 4/2, 1 wind. When you cast it, you target an opponent's Elestral, and that Elestral is suppressed for as long as Cockadoodle is enchanted. That can have some pretty useful use cases, like into Original Galaxy, that's pretty nice. It can crash into Specterus, because Specterus won't be able to suppress when it enters battle, so it will remain a 4. Same for Viserys. So some useful stuff you can do there. And then Champion Cockadoodle is a 4/1, 1 wind Elestral. And when it's sent from your field or deck to the underworld, not from hand, important, because you do send from hand sometimes, you can suppress a card on the field until the next turn. Also, I believe you will not get that effect if it's sent from field to underworld because you underenchanted it, because it will be underenchanted at that point and not have its effects anymore. So this can target any card, but it's not super useful. It can be used to like turn off like an artifact or stadium rune in some ways that can be useful. But like the effect on this card very commonly is not that handy. Outside of like, oh, this is a way to pump up my Dracodoodle because I suppressed something on the field, and now there's something suppressed on the field, so that Dracodoodle is getting its +2 attack buff, which can be relevant for getting over some things. But mainly these are both here as effectively Hydrakes. Hydrakes that don't have a Pentair, but have a better Twindra, a much better Twindra, in exchange for all the upsides that we've already discussed. Now, how are we getting that there? Of course, it's Hermes. We have Spine Champion of Hermes, which is a 2/4, 1 Earth that on normal cast, which is our deck for Hermes. And Hermes is a Divine Rune, 1 Wind, that we can enchant an extra 3 winds onto on cast. And you can disenchant 2 wind from this Hermes in order to search your deck for a wind Elestral and send it to the underworld. So the basic playline is we Spine for Hermes, or we just raw open the Hermes. We get out the Hermes with 4 spirits on it. Depending on the matchup, if you're worried about it being a matchup where Hermes is going to be killed super quickly by like an Eklynx or a Thunderstorm, you might only put 2 on it. Then you go disenchant 2 and dump the Dracodoodle from our deck. If we drew into the Dracodoodle, that is what the Carry-On is for. A Carry-On is a 3/1, 1 Wind Elestral, and when it's sent from your deck or underworld, to the underworld from your Hermes effect, you can special cast it from your underworld using wind from either your spirit deck or your underworld. So if you drew into the Dracodoodle, you can instead go send the Carry-On, cast it out, and then ascend into Dracodoodle. Of course, that doesn't work so well if we had to Spine Nymph for the Hermes. That might be an argument for running 3 Hermes to Spine Nymph. And of course, the reason you want to put 4 on the Hermes is because on the next turn, when you can Hermes again, you can just go Hermes, dump any of the Cockatoodles from your deck, and just immediately get the special cast out the Dracodoodle, and you haven't used your normal cast, which is pretty great. Always feels pretty good. So we're not using our normal cast when we do that line, right? So we want to use our normal cast for something else that's profitable. That's why we have, well, we want this anyways, 3 Ass Rabbit, because it's Ass Rabbit. When it receives a Thunder, you look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 of them to your hand, and shuffle the rest into your deck. This is a really good normal cast when we don't need to spend it on something else. Just a very good starter in general. And then we have 3 Nemesail and 3 Crackle as healers. So we are on a decent amount of Thunders because of the Ass Rabbit stuff, but also to enable Crackle. And then, of course, we're on a ton of Wind, and Nemesail lets us heal that back. So the biggest issue with the Dracodoodle stuff is that it costs a lot. Like that basic line I showed you before where we play out the Hermes, we disenchant 2 from it, dump Dracodoodle. The next turn we disenchant another 2 from it, dump a Cockatoodle, cast out the Dracodoodle from our underworld. That costs 6. That whole line costs 6 spirits. It is really, really expensive. However, what it's doing is pretty strong. But we need ways to supplement our spirit our spirit usage. So taking advantage of the fact that we aren't using our normal cast often when we go for Dracodoodle, and spending that normal cast on a healer like Nemesail or Crackle is a really good way of getting us back into a good position. We also have 3 Ambrosias, of course. Super, super essential in this deck in particular because we need more spirits. Our plays are strong, but they cost a lot of spirits. So we need as many ways as we can to get more spirits. And then we have the funny card, Golden Apple of Discord. This card sees like negative competitive play. It's seen play in like Cobalt's Celestial deck, which is now banned into the sun because Rise is at 1. So what does Golden Apple of Discord do? Golden Apple of Discord costs 1 of any spirit. It's an invoke rune, and you discard a card from your hand to use it. That's the part that we care about. We don't care about what the rest of this card does. But what the rest of this card does is then you discard a card from your opponent's hand at random, and you make them mill 2. Now that's pretty nice. That's pretty nice to do. But the reason we care about this card is that it discards a card from our hand. So we can go, for example, we cast this, we discard any of our Cockadoodles, and we special cast out Dracodoodle, and we haven't spent our normal cast. So that's cool. Other important thing, Dracodoodle really dislikes Shield. Shield is really bad for this card. Because if it's in your hand, you can't really do a whole lot with it. You can once, like, dump a Carry-On to cast out, and then you can ascend into Dracodoodle. But that's not what we really want to be doing. So having a way in our deck of dumping the Dracodoodle from our hand is pretty cool. Is pretty important, honestly. And there's a cool thing you can do. Let's say we have the Dracodoodle in our hand because it got shielded there. And we cast out a Cockadoodle. The spirit on it doesn't really matter for this. We go, okay, I'm going to cast Golden Apple of Discord. Paying off of the Cockadoodle and discarding the Dracodoodle. Now, as you may know, when an Elestral has less spirits on it than the number in its enchantment cost, it goes to the Underworld. It is under-enchanted, can no longer remain on the field, and leaves the field. However, that does not happen until the end of the current chain. So, what happens here is you pay off the Cockadoodle, then you start doing this, and you discard a card from your hand. Then a Golden Apple resolves, discards a card random from our opponent's hand, and mills 2. Then, at the end of that chain, Cockadoodle will go to the Underworld as well as Golden Apple. And then, Dracodoodle is already in the Underworld at that point to see the Cockadoodle go to the Underworld and is able to special cast itself out. So it is not only a way for us to get the Dracodoodle out of our hand, it also enables us to immediately get Dracodoodle back on the field, which is pretty fantastic. Then we have the 1 Earthquake. We're already on Earth for Spy Nymph, so like there's really no reason to not be carrying Earthquake. Then we have a pretty standard Cameroon suite. Now you may notice there's no Hermes Trickery in this deck. We don't particularly benefit from Hermes Trickery. We're not on the Spinal Sex stuff, so we're not getting any like powerful like, oh, I'm gonna dodge removal and also bounce your Elestral during your turn. You're not getting an interaction like that. And if you're not getting an interaction like that, the trouble of trying to keep Hermes on the field so that Trickery remains alive is just not worth it. It's just not worth it. So we instead go, okay, we're not going to run Trickery. We're just going to run normal counter runes. So we have 3 Gorgon's Gaze, 3 Shield, 2 PTA, 3 Tsunami. Now, also with counter runes, bear in mind that under-enchantment stuff, that under-enchantment of a Cockadoodle causing it to leave the field also triggers Dracodoodle, because it means you can go do stuff like, okay, my opponent has, like, say my opponent has a 4-attack Elestral, like Hydrake's favorite thing in the world. Okay, I'm going to cast out my Cockadoodle, and let's say I'm going to cast it with a Water Spirit. And threaten to crash in, and then swing in for 2 with Dracodoodle. Okay, that's pretty cool. But my opponent goes PTA, paying off their Elestral. So there's no longer Elestral on the field, and my Cockadoodle is going to leave the field. That's not fantastic. Actually, no, that interaction, we don't care about that at all, because when it leaves the field, it's not Hydrake. It's not Hydrake. That's not the interaction I was trying to think of. I've got it. We run out Cockadoodle. They have something in defense that it could have gotten over, like, let's say, like a Crackle. PTA doesn't even work here. But let's say they Gorgon's Gaze, stop the attack. We were trying to crash in, they Gorgon's Gaze, stop the attack. Okay. During our opponent's turn, we can then go, okay, I'm gonna Tsunami, switching your guys to defense and paying off of my Cockadoodle to cause it to leave the field and bring out Dracodoodle. That's cool stuff. That's really neat. And you can do that with any of your counter runes. PTA, pay the one that you need for the enchantment cost off the Cockadoodle. Shield, pay the one you need for the enchantment cost off the Cockadoodle. Stuff like that. With freely chainable runes, this is particularly important to keep in mind, because these are ways that you can, when your Dracodoodle is about to run into a shield, they flip up the shield. You can go like, okay, Tsunami, even if misenchanted, you can flip up a Tsunami, like pay the 1 wind off the, actually no, that doesn't work. I forgot. I forgot how shield works. Ignore what I just said because I forgot how shield works. Actually important to know. You cannot get around shield in that way when you're swinging in with Dracodoodle. Because even if the Elestral becomes under-enchanted, it doesn't leave the field until the chain ends. And by the time the chain ends, shield will have bounced it back to the hand. So you cannot actually juke around that. But the Cockatoodle interactions are very relevant. Being able to like pay off Cockatoodle to do a counter rune and also get out your Dracodoodle is very powerful frequently. Of course, Dracodoodle has like a number of weaknesses. It's only 2 defense, which means dies to Galaxy, dies to Eddy, dies to Cryoblast. But the strength is that like you're able to go into it time and time and time again. Every single Cockatoodle represents another Dracodoodle, and like demands your opponent's resources time and time and time again. And that's the real strength of Dracodoodle. It always feels like a strong card when it's able to like do the thing it is trying to do. It's always been a problem in testing of this costs too much for what it's doing. And that largely comes into the initial setup being way too expensive. So with a sufficient number of healers and the golden apple to get it out of our hand, as well as additional ways to like special cast out a Dracodoodle by discarding a Cockatoodle, this feels pretty solid. It's been feeling pretty decent in my testing. I do like spiders more as a deck, so like I'm not super likely to bring it to Premier, which is why I'm super willing to do this deck profile. If anyone else like really likes Hermes, really likes Dracodoodle, and wants to get some ideas of what to do with this. But yeah, I think this is decently potent. I think this does have legs. I don't think this is the perfect list, but this has felt the closest of anything I've done with Hermes. One thing to note before we get into the Spirit deck, we are on a decent number of Thunders for Crackle, as you'll see. And I think there's a pretty good argument to trying to fit Zeus into this deck. Because Zeus good, obviously, and allows our 4s, our 3s, and whatever to get over our opponent's bodies more often and threaten them before even getting into the Dracodoodle, which makes it more likely for the Dracodoodle to be impactful. So that is something I would bear in mind if you take this deck and try to modify it. But this has felt pretty solid. All right, let us get into the Spirit deck. All right, and here is our Spirit deck. Very basic stuff. We have the 2 Earth because we're on Spinef and also Earthquake, so that's the bare minimum we need. For waters, we're only on the Tsunamis for stuff that must be enchanted with water, so 2 is all we need. 5 is the amount of Thunders you need for Crackle to feel comfortable. And then everything else goes into Wind, because Hermes can only be enchanted with Wind, and Dracodoodle must be cast with 2 winds. So we need as many winds as we can manage while having the spirits we need for the other functions in the deck. But yeah, that's the Spirit deck. There's nothing else to really say here. It's Dracodoodle. It's just Dracodoodle Turbo, giving us enough with enough healing to allow you to continue to play the game and not just like burn yourself to death. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. Again, if you're getting anything from the Shop Elestrals store, use my affiliate link in the description. I would appreciate it a lot. And with that said, this is Hunter Church signing off.